Namaskaram and welcome to Daily Global Insights number 117. Today is the 12th of March 2021. As always, I have with me Sridhar Chityala ji. Sridhar ji, Namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel on this Mahasivaratri day.
Namaskaram and good morning to you and good morning to everybody. In India, the Mahashivaratri just wraps up, and then whereas here, we will be culminating it as well. So thank you and best wishes to all.
And the main points in today's news bulletin: Donald Trump claims credit for COVID-19 vaccines, first year of anniversary. Biden to procure 100 million doses of extra J&J vaccines. Viewers might know that J&J requires only one shot. How 3 hours and 10 experts got India's homegrown Covaxin efficacy and safety tag. Global COVID, 118.85 million cases, 6.3 million, 2.63 million deaths, 94.38 million recoveries, and 21.84 million active cases. And in US news, Biden's first month in office sees record levels of illegal migration, including illegal immigrant children. Sridharji, is it now getting under control or it is still going unabated, sir?
I think what is going on is the formalization of the illegal process as a legal method of access. That's what is going on.
Well, it is a bit of a concern that this is still going on, and I thought that with additional troops and other things, that things would be getting under a little bit of control, but it looks like it is still going on unabated. House Democrats flood Senate with partisan bills in scheme to burst filibuster. For those viewers of ours who might not know what a filibuster is, perhaps you can touch upon that word and then explain the new strategy of Democrats, sir.
I think the way the filibuster rule has to be looked at is it's a mechanism that allows minority parties to block legislation from advancing in the Senate. It's predominantly for controversial or people who are on either side of the fence on legislation around climate, unionism, minimum wages, size of the stimulus, allocation of capital. You saw that around the immigration issues, the treatment of illegal migrants, illegal border crossing, etc. The filibuster has the ability to keep debate open on a legislative item until the Senate votes to close it. And obviously, the debate will require 60 votes instead of the usual 50. If you don't have 60 votes, you can't move to final voting. So the debate goes on. So one of the ways that they came up with is when both parties are playing hardball, all you need is either to get 60 votes or bypass the filibuster to accomplish anything. The reason why they don't use filibuster, but they don't bypass the filibuster, is it applies equally to either parties. So today, if you don't use the filibuster and use a simple majority, which is adequate per constitution, you can just use the simple majority rule and introduce every legislation that you think that suits your party. But recognize that when you do that, when the majority changes, the same rule will apply when you are sitting in the minority and the opposition. So this is like an implicit kind of a soft mechanism that is used by either parties. And the objective is use this judiciously rather than going on saying, we'll continue the debate for hours for every legislative piece that is coming in. So the Senate Democrats are using a norm called as, if you send 10 legislative or 10 major reforms to the Senate, they're not going to be able to use the filibuster rule for every one of those. There's no implicit or explicit rule, but you're not going to be using that as a common sense for every piece. So that's the filibuster. The term itself is a little misnomer, an oxymoron. But this is not enshrined in the Constitution. It just evolved as a process between the two main parties to make sure that there is a respect for passage of law on either side.
The Democrats urged the EPA, the Environment Protection Agency, to expand powers to protect Biden climate agenda. Pelosi, Schumer zero in on gun controls, expansion of the gun background checks, a sweeping reform that failed in 2019. Actually, I, for one, like this one. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think this is the diametrically opposite between the centrist versus the conservative, what you call to the right. The centrists often believe that there has to be a legislation which is a fair and just mechanism to make sure that adequate safeguards are put in place before a license is issued for purchase or acquiring a gun. The same thing applies, for the transfer of a gun. Though it's private, both for private and public, they want to extend the same rule rather than, I am the grandfather, so I want to give it to my grandson, the gun, once he reaches a specific age. That's private matter, right? So therefore he says, okay, please use the gun. So what the law says is whether you are private or whether you are non-private, every transfer or every method by which you give control for the usage of the gun has to be regulated. Now, on the contrary, the centrists believe, or the right, the conservatives believe, I've got a gun only for, I've acquired a gun, I'm licensed and I'm registered. So leave the judgment to me. You mean to say all the crimes that are occurring out there is only because of this licensing? Otherwise, there's not going to be. It's like saying, if you have police stations, there's no crime. So that is their argument. So I understand your point of view, which is to say, as a centrist, you would want to say, hey, why not we have this and work it out? To me, as far as I'm, personally, when I look at it, safety mechanisms work up to a point. We don't mind experimenting it, but rather than unilaterally going from one extreme to the other extreme. Because going from one extreme to other extreme is neither going to solve the problem.
And viewers, as a cadet in NCC, I learned to fire a 303 rifle as well as a .38 Smith & Wesson. These are fun things to learn when you are going through NCC as either a high schooler or a college student. I urge every one of you to encourage your kids to be part of NCC because it is sort of like being part of Army, but you learn the discipline and all the other good things that go with it. 50 days have passed in the Biden administration, and according to one poll, over 50% of the population thinks that Biden is not fit to be president in terms of like his health. And to just bolster that point of view, it is now 50 days and the president has still not called a press conference. We have to remember that Donald Trump did on the 28th day of his presidency. Thoughts, sir?
My thoughts are, I think that there is a growing speculation who is running United States. And there's no coherency and consistency, in terms of some of the policies that are coming out. You remember we talked about the flip-flop on the Iran side of the situation. We are beginning to see the flip-flop on the Chinese side of the situation. On one side, you have COVID discussions going on, and then the China threat issues going on as part of the Quad and as part of the bilateral discussions, that is between the defense secretary and the Indian defense minister, and between 2+2 between United States and Japan, and then Mr. Suga and Mr. Biden, and then the discussions with Korea. But on the same side, flip side, you have another discussion that is taking place in Alaska between Biden and Blinken with the Wang Yi, who is the Chinese foreign. Li Keqiang, who is the Chinese prime minister, and then Wang Yi, who is the foreign minister. And they made it very clear, which is namely to say the United States must respect the Chinese kind of sovereignty and its laws and its mechanism. So it is raising a question, which is to say, while you have this aggressive posture on one side, what is this discussion in Alaska about, which is secretive, which is outside the purview of the other nations?
Well, it's an interesting question that you pose, sir. And viewers, those of you who might be wondering, who did Xi Jinping defeat to become the premier of Chinese Communist Party? It was the prime minister, or he's the prime minister of China, Li Keqiang. So, who knows what is in store there, and we will know soon enough, I guess. The next point, sir, is farmers react to billions in COVID-19 relief. Relief bill for black farmers. This looks like they are segregating and especially looking at a segment saying it doesn't make common sense. COVID relief of 4 billion to pay up to 120% of the debt. I can understand a complete write down, sir. Why 120%?
The 120% of debt is, which is as of January 1st, there is a number, and there is an accrued number that goes beyond January 1st. And so what the Biden administration has done as part of the COVID relief is to set a target of $4 billion, which could as well be 110%. It just translates to about 120%. But it is just not black farmers. These are people who are Asian, Latino, the native Indian, as well as the black farmers. Now, this is the group that's going to get the benefit, whereas the white farmers are not going to see a penny of it flowing into their kind of coffers.
So perhaps we should rephrase it as non-white. So I stand corrected, sir. In India news, building world's most expensive imaging satellite. ISRO ships key component of NISAR or NISAR to NASA. A little bit more detail about NISAR. Is this something that the NASA is going to launch into outer space?
Yes, I think that it is a dual band, two radar, satellite, which the ISRO will be launching using the GSLV satellite. So from Sriharikota. So this is a collaboration between NASA as well as the NASA on integrating a dual band antenna to be launched by India, but the key component of it is being provided, what they call as the SAR, satellite aperture radar, is being given by the ISRO to NASA. What it just tells is that the distance that India has traveled in science and especially in satellite, in terms of offering its capabilities to such a sophisticated and one of the oldest space organizations, NASA.
Yes, impressive indeed. And from brickbats to bouquets, Canada puts up banners in Greater Toronto thanking India and Prime Minister Modi for the much needed vaccines. Viewers, I might as well tell you, I live in the Silicon Valley. There are banners for just about anything and everything happening in India, including the SSR case. So this comes as a pleasant surprise. Your thoughts, sir, this 180-degree turnaround in thinking in Canada?
Well, I think that you can see that apparently it also says it's a Hindu forum of Greater Canada. So the point is that Trudeau stood up just a couple of days ago. I think we reported that again. Trudeau stood up and basically said, India is the vaccine lab of the world, and if somebody is going to come out, if the world is going to come out of COVID, India is going to be the anchor behind this. This is after all the brouhaha on the farmers' agitation and other issues, including his unannounced visit with people and then going into Punjab, etc. It seems to be like a sudden flip-flop. And now he is saying, I need it. Canada has no manufacturing facilities and capabilities for vaccine. It's reliant on exports or imports. It's reliant on imports. So the story here is that it asked for an emergency 500,000. Then it asked for another 1 million. And India has come forward and supplied. So there's obviously everybody is very happy about it.
Indian Air Force is set up to raise its second squadron of Rafale combat aircraft. It's going to be perhaps ready around middle of April, and it will be based in Hasimara. So this means that India is now quickly ramping up on its Rafale squadrons, isn't it?
It is on the east and west, on the up north and east. So, which are the more kind of the strategic kind of commands that it is looking at. If you're looking at east, then you're looking at China, right? So, which is namely, especially around the northeastern borders. As far as the north is concerned, it has already got the Rafale air base to cover the Chinese incursions on that side. So they have covered themselves on LAC as well as on the Arunachal Pradesh side with its positioning. It also says to you that India is not taking the Chinese disengagement process very lightly. It is equipping. It doesn't want any surprises in the border.
And India will be discussing, this is a sneak peek into what will be happening between the Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh and Defense Secretary. India will be discussing fighter planes or fighter jets, unmanned drones, communication systems, and so on. So the table is now set for India to start requesting or accessing some of the most top-notch technology from the United States. So all this is in deterrence of perhaps a invasion by China. What are your thoughts?
I think that what India is saying is to be a superpower and to be an economic power, just merely having a GDP alone is inadequate. So for it to be an economic power, it must demonstrate it has both industrial as well as the military power to combat what is to come. So if you see that carefully, the way we try in PGurus to orchestrate the agenda is around all the kind of nuts and bolts that India is enabling itself in terms of being what it is, be it on the defense side, be it on the manufacturing side, be it on the deterrence side, and being part of the greater groups in terms of developing some of the strategic kind of technologies that is to come. We will soon see when we get to the Asia that India is going to be part of a greater chain. So I think that's the message that we are trying to communicate. One is satellite, the second is the vaccines, the third is the Airforce as a deterrence. Fourth, the discussions with the foreign minister is about, okay, now let's do business. Right? You want to do business, let's do business and open up the kabunas. We already have BECs from you. We already have Chinooks from you. We already have the F-17s and F-35s and the manufacturing capabilities here. So where do we go from here? I think that's the agenda that we are looking at.
And in Asia news, Australia now is going after browsers. Remember, viewers, that Australia was acting against social media platforms, and now it is going after browsers after passing the new news bargaining law. In terms of what is the market shares, Safari has a 51% market share, Chrome has 39%, Samsung 7%, and Mozilla 1%. This is on devices. On desktops and laptops, it is Chrome 62%, Safari 18%, Edge 9%, and Mozilla 6%. If you want to know what I use Edge. Conflict with China will be on land, not just at sea, according to a US general. So where will be the land conflict be, Sridharji? Is it Taiwan is referring to or LAC?
Both.
Okay.
Taiwan, LAC. I also could be encroaching into the lands of Philippines, Indonesia, and even Myanmar. So therefore, what they're saying is that no longer assume that there's nothing to battle. We'll lose each other and demonstrate, who has got better armory. But if I occupy land, then I have a strategic kind of opportunity to expand my footprint and also, mount my flag. Taiwan and the line of actual control and the Northeast are really, really the areas besides Nepal. Nepal is very much in the eyes. Bhutan is very much in the eyes. So the whole Himalayan kingdom is one. Then once they get the Himalayan kingdom and once they get the Taiwanese, which is around the South China, that side of the East Asia side, then their attention will shift to Africa. Okay. Remember, they are also contesting with United States, Europe, and even India in the Gulf of Aden.
And Quad tightens rare earth cooperation. It's been a known fact that China has been grabbing all the rare earth elements across the world, and this has been going on for a few years now, perhaps even a few decades. And finally, I think Quad is getting its act together and trying to form some sort of a cooperation where they can essentially counter China. Is it a little too late, sir?
No, it's not. I think that they're recrafting the value chain. The value chain comprises of procurement, technology, development, technology, funding, and development. So, in other words, what they're saying is that we'll now do a global procurement, then we'll establish how the funding will occur, then there's a development, and then there is distribution. So, in other words, you're not reliant on one single, player, but you are harnessing the resources. For example, India is capable, Australia is capable to grant its resources. Even United States has the ability to. So the question is, rather than each country by itself, now how do you kind of harness it? This is my other point, which is to say you can begin to see now India being slowly pitched and positioned in every one of the major developments taking place in the world.
Yes, indeed. And remember, viewers, we have talked about Myanmar coup and the ASEAN countries, ASEAN countries, who would like to get this thing resolved. We now hear that Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia are urging for a dialogue for a peaceful settlement. We will keep you informed on the progress on this. And in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, the Hong Kong activists urge EU not to sign China investment deal. Do you think the EU is going to agree? After all, EU is just a toothless tiger anyway.
EU agreed to do the deal, but they have not signed the deal as yet. And mind you, EU doesn't mean that some of those nations will comply with the deal. For example, France may say, okay, you've done it, no problem. But I may not be doing the deal with China. So there's this conflict as well. It remains to be seen. You remember UK passed a law where there are very specific and demonstrable instances of the failure of human rights. Then UK courts can rule, even let alone the government, but even companies cannot do business. So EU, this is one of the reasons why UK, being Brexit, has independent ability to make a decision rather than being reliant and tied to the EU model. The question is, it's a 50-50 chance whether they will stall or whether they'll move forward.
And millions of websites went offline after fire in one of the data centers of French cloud services company OVH Cloud, and Iran's QUD forces linked to the explosion outside of Israel embassy in Delhi. This happened a few weeks ago. You may have known that there wasn't much human damage, but I think there were some buildings damaged.
Cars.
Some cars were damaged. Okay, so maybe it was a car bomb, right?
They have, that's not established as yet. Israel was allowed to be part of the investigations. Now they have concluded as to who the people who were behind the attack. Now they're going to get to the specifics around what devices were used and how they were used. Right? I think it is some kind of IED devices based on the initial evidence, and exploded obviously through some of these remote control phones.
And in markets, the Standard & Poor's index is up more than 1% to hit a record high. NASDAQ has rallied 2.5% as bond yields stabilize and stimulus checks start going out. So you said, and you've been mentioning this consistently, that this year is going to be a gangbuster year for stock markets. What do you suggest, sir? People should maximize their IRA and then use that money to go into stock market? Would that be one advice? We're not saying which specific stock to buy. We're just giving overall broad advice.
So my broad advice is that, again, compliance statement, which is to say, this is an opinion and you should consult your own financial advisors. So please don't treat it as a PGurus type of an advice. It's a general disposition that Sri IRG is asking, and then as part of the panel that or the expert team of PGurus, I'm giving an opinion. My view is that if you're not in stock markets this year, you will never be in stock markets any year. Case number one, because of the amount of money that is in the system. There is a natural buoyancy when the economy grows, the stock markets grow. Naturally, the economy cannot grow without the underlying corporate companies, corporate profits growing. The economy is expected to grow between 5 and 8%. This has not happened in the United States in recent memory. So naturally, there is a buoyancy towards that. Watch for the correlation between the rising rates to the tech stocks. So you have a judicious mix between the growth and the value stocks. You ain't going to lose. When the economy grows, the value stocks are going to perform very well in the market. Now, whenever you see this continued downward opportunities when the rates kind of go down, rates go up and the tech stocks take a hit, is the opportunity to go and buy and exit when you see appropriate. So to answer your question, I've given you micro and macro view. This is the year where the stocks are going to perform quite stellar. The current target for S&P is around 4,200s. That gives you an indication. At least there is still another 10% left for that, or 8% left in the oomph of the S&P to kind of move forward if you are not already here.
And the Dow Jones Industrial Average finished plus 188 points. The S&P was plus 40 points. NASDAQ was plus 329 points. The US Treasury 10-year yield is 1.542%. The 30-year yield is 2.299%. Crude is at 65 and Brent is at 69. Are the crude prices now stabilizing, sir? What are your thoughts on that?
The crude prices are stabilizing. There's no doubt about it. There is a good indication of what the demand will look like as more and more people come out and start using. We covered this again. We will not see that huge demand that typically is present when jet fuel is added, because still the air traffic has not increased. But what you're seeing is purely the supply-demand issue being managed adequately as more people take to the roads.
And that brings us to a close of today's DJI. We are planning to have a special session over the weekend where, Sridharji, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are on what this special session will be about?
I think the special session will focus on three important themes. One is there's a lot of Quad discussions that are going on at two levels. One is at the leadership level, which is the prime ministers and presidents of the four nations. Then there is a dialogue that is going on at a 2+2, which is generally the defense and the secretaries of state or the foreign ministers. So you have those two dialogues going on. You also potentially have a lead up to what is going to happen in the Quad dialogue, on the defense ministers dialogue with the defense secretaries dialogue between India and United States. You also have an Alaska dialogue that is likely to happen, and some trend lines around that. So you have a fair amount of discussions, which is a geostrategic topic. So we would like to make sure that, we're not going to wait for 3 days before people get to know. So we'll give an update on that. There's also a lot of legislative stuff that is going on in the United States. We'll probably talk something a little bit about that. Then I think we also have to we complete 1 year today, March 11th or March
COVID.
March 12th, COVID 1 year, and we kind of need to give a little update as to how this has been traumatized or melodramatized, notwithstanding the fact it caused a lot of disruptions. Disruptions have occurred due to strikes, various kinds of things. When you take a look at that, 118 million people or 120 million people have contracted. Close to 90 to 93 million people have recovered. 93 million people have recovered. There's about 18, 19 million people around the world who are still being actively treated. So on a relative scale of things, this has been a story where the human endeavor and the ability of the human tolerance and the ability to toggle is something that we want to kind of cover, and how the world came together and in less than 1 year has come up with almost 4 different vaccines to address the issue.
Thank you very much, Sridharji, and Namaskaram. And we'll see you all on either Saturday or Sunday. We will give you an announcement just before that. And before I go, please don't forget to subscribe. Also donate to our channel. And I must also tell you that after the 31st of March, there will be no longer live online transmission on Twitter, because Twitter is disconnecting the service that they used to use with Periscope. So you will still be able to watch our program live on YouTube and Facebook. This is just a heads up, and we had nothing to do with it, nor are we being penalized. Thank you very much, and namaskar.
Namaskar and have a wonderful day.